World War II, the most widespread war in the history of mankind, ravaged Europe and Asia. But not until December 7th of 1941 did that war hit home, with a direct attack on the United States. During this strenuous time, President Roosevelt authorized an executive order that forcibly relocated Japanese Americans to internment camps, forcing them to leave everything that they had worked for behind. This is the story of one man who lost everything, only to find so much more.
Well, Mr. Ono, first I want to thank you for coming here and doing this interview with SNJ today. It's an honor and a privilege for me to be able to sit down and talk with you today. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions that you could, share your experience and what you remember. December 7th, 1941. Do you remember where you were when you first heard that Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I remember the day. On December 7th, I was home, and about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, I got a telephone call from my mother. On December the 7th, she was in church. It was Sunday, and I was living in San Pedro, which is across the channel from Terminal Island, where I was born. But the church was in Terminal Island, so my mother was in church, and on the way back, she had to cross to the other side of San Pedro through a ferry boat. But when she came to the ferry, she got stranded there because the war had started, she found out. So she wanted me to bring her a jacket because she was detained by the immigration people. But she said, bring my jacket for me, but I said, don't you bring it because you're going to be detained here also, so let your buddy Stanley, who is a Caucasian fellow, my buddy that lives right too close to me, and he says, yeah, I can take it for you. So he took it over there. And she came back the next day. She was detained for overnight, and then she came back the next day. My dad at the time was in Mexico fishing, and they came back on the 9th of December. The cannery called us up and told me to come unload the boat. So the reason why they came to San Diego was the fact that they were in Mexico. They couldn't come out the San Pedro to unload.
So your father was a fisherman?
Yes. They generally go off for 2 or 3 weeks before they come back up. So when they found the war had started, it took them 2 days to come up to San Diego, which is the closest port in the United States. So as soon as they came up there, they were taken into San Diego jail, and the cannery told us to come unload the boat. So my cousin and I, we went from San Pedro to San Diego to unload the fish. And when we got there, land and behold, everything was ransacked, the boat, not the fish, but the belongings that belonged to the people. Even the machine shop lathe, drill press, all those things were taken away. And even the elements off the stove was taken away. Only thing they didn't touch at that time was they had an immigration sticker on the radio operator's room and captain's quarter. They had a little sticker on their immigration sticker. That was the only 2 cabins that wasn't looted. The rest of it was all looted out. And that's when I first found out that I was different than anybody else. Now, Caucasian people, there's a lot of people that lived in San Pedro because they're generally all mostly fishermen and dock workers. Norwegian big guys were generally dock workers, and Italians, Portuguese, Yugoslavians, they were all fishermen. Most of them were fishermen because Terminal Island is one of the biggest fishing industry in the world at that time. And most of the fishermen were Japanese. And the Italians were, a lot of fishermen are Italians too, but most of them lived on the San Pedro side, not on the Terminal Island side. And since they came back and they were taken into jail, we had to go and unload. And when we finished unloading, I came back to San Pedro again. Before I even got into the house, they picked me up and took me to the police department, and that's when they picked me up. They picked up all the stuff that I brought, and then I had to sign for all the stuff that I brought back, which were not a confiscated item, but they still wanted me to sign those papers, and they held me there till 1 o'clock in the morning that morning. That's how the first few days started for me when the war started. And until then, I didn't know what prisons was, because you think I was 18 years of age at that time. I had got my 1A notification and was going to college. And at 18, you think you're the smartest guy in the world, you know. I didn't even know where Pearl Harbor was at that time. So, and we were just an ordinary kid, college kid. And only difference was that I didn't look like an Italian who is a Caucasian kid. Now, Italians and the Germans, they were all Axis nation with Japan at that time. But nothing done to them. But I found out different because I looked different. But in your heart, you're still the same thing. You don't change your heart just overnight. But they changed our classification overnight. I was 1A when I turned 18, but when the war started, 3 months later, I became 4C.
Okay, so what is the difference? What does 1A mean and what does 4C mean? Explain that to me.
Well, you wouldn't know. You guys, of course, today they don't have drafts. So
no, they don't. No, they don't. So 1A would have been the highest classification?
When you're 1A, you're excellent. Nothing's wrong with you until you get your physical. You become 1A. 4C is enemy alien. So,
wow. Okay.
So within three months, from September to my birthday was September. That's when I turned 18. And in December, it was a couple of weeks later after that, I got another reclassification. It was 4C.
So you went from being at the top of the list in terms of desirability to be right at the bottom of the list.
My heart didn't change it. You know, I mean, I'm still American. I mean, it's no different. So those are the kind of things that we encountered at that time. But even then, I still didn't think I was any different, you know, because all my buddies are still the same. But California at that time was recruiting a lot of people from Oklahoma, Arkansas, to work in the shipyards and aircraft companies. And everything what they read in the paper, they believed. The Hearst paper wrote everything up, and derogatory stuff against the Japanese. So right away, all hysteria developed. And the main thing that, to me, I found out that it was greed more than anything else, the Caucasian people's greed. And they want to grab our property because we built that terminal island from nothing to the world's biggest fishing industry, the Japanese people. And the farmers are the same way. The older generation, my folks, they were called Issei, first generation, my dad. We're called Nisei, which means two, second generation. My kids are called Sansei, which is third generation. First generation, when the war started, I mean, they're mostly, they're all Japanese oriented, but they're Americanized to a point, but they're not full Americanized yet. They're still, you know, like a half and half. Where the kids are mostly all Japanese. Maybe some of them are leaning more towards Japan, but most of the kids they don't know other country other than the United States, like myself. I don't know any other country, so you're American. So that's the way you felt.
You felt like an American.
Oh yeah, and you still didn't think any different. You know, even though they gave you a 4C classification, you're an enemy agent, you still feel the same as anybody else. Only thing is your complexion is different, your features different, so you get pegged right away. Now, if I was a little bit older, maybe if I'm 24, 25, after I graduated out of college and then went to look for a job, I might notice prejudice then. But until then, I didn't know.
You were still young enough.
I was going to college, but I still didn't encounter any prejudice at the time because we all grew up together. And they were all mostly from a foreign country. The Italians, folks, they're all first generation, and these kids are all second generation, just like us. And we all got along fine. There was nothing wrong with it, you know. So we thought we were all the same thing, except when the war started, right away you were picked, and they said that the government said we're going to take you inland so that if there's an invasion or anything, that they can tell we can't tell the difference between you, so we're going to move you inland so it'd be safer that way. So that's what the JACL came in there. And they said, well, don't give any static to the government. Do what they tell you to do.
So they sold this to you as a way of protecting you in the event of an invasion, so that they couldn't tell the difference between...
Right. Only thing is, that didn't hold water to me because of the fact that there was more Chinese than Japanese. So,
I see.
So to me, it was just a complete different idea, but the Chinese put a tag on their belt saying, I'm a Chinese on there. So why should they separate the Japanese from the Chinese and just move the Japanese in? So that was all greed. They want to get rid of the Japanese who had a good fishing industry, they had good farmland, and they had the poorest land, but the Japanese people are very ingenuity-wise. They can produce stuff by doing this, doing that, inventing different, just like with the fishing industry. My grandfather came to Hawaii in 1897, I think, and he was there 5 years, and he developed a hook with any barbs on there for tuna fishing. But it's a jig. They call it a jig. You drag it behind a boat, and you can catch a fish. And when you bring it in, you don't have to play around to take the hook off. All you do is shake it, and the fish comes off. So he had invented that, but he wanted to utilize that to catch tuna in mass production. And that's the reason why he sent his son and my dad and 3 brothers in course of 10 years into the United States. The oldest one came to Seattle, 1906, I think it was. My dad came in 8 to San Francisco, and the 3rd one came, I don't know where, but anyway, I think San Francisco, and they migrated down to Terminal Island because that place was being built. Terminal Island was nothing but a rattlesnake island at the time, and there was nothing but a thin strip of island, and out of this island, when it was filled up, that became the fishermen's. There was about 3,000 Japanese people. They all lived on that island, and then eventually, when the war came, there was 9 canneries, different 9 of them. So it was a big fishing industry. It was the world's biggest fishing industry. So that's how they made their living. But it was under a corporation, because they couldn't operate, they couldn't own the first generation Japanese could never own any property because they could never become citizens. That was a law.
So there was a law that would not allow them to be citizens?
No, you couldn't become a citizen. And so like my folks, what they done, when the first kids were born, their 3 brothers, they put their name on to become a corporation. And we're the one that owned the boat, actually. Through the corporation, like myself. We were citizens.
So what happened next? Then they told you they were going to move you into more inland of the United States. Where did you go?
Yeah, well, first of all, since we weren't on the water, Terminal Island was right on the water there. It was called Zone A. So we have to move 30 miles inland. So that was Zone B. So I had a cousin that lived in Studio City on Langsham Avenue in Van Nuys Valley. So they got us a place in North Hollywood, off of Langsham, at Violin Avenue in North Hollywood. That's where we moved to. And then we were there 3 months. And then after the 3rd month, another order came through. In February, Roosevelt, executive order, said that we're going to move all the Japanese out of California and all the coastal state. And between Ben Denson and General DeWitt, they were the one that enforced the law, the executive order that Roosevelt gave, and to move all the people inland. That was in February, middle of February sometime, I can't remember the date. But when that came, right away, we have to move inland. And since the Terminal Island people were the first one, in fact, we had to move from Zone A to Zone B in 48 hours. And what can you do in 48 hours? So in 48 hours, you have to sell everything you got. A big truck will come on and say, look, I'll buy everything in the house for $25. So this is where I find that many people are really greedy. They think you're down and under, so they try to grab something for nothing. And so a lot of people say, no, go ahead. Well, I'm not going to sell nothing. I'll go rather burn it than sell it you for $25. So anyway, that's how we were moved inland. But when we were supposed to go to camp wasn't even built, but they built 10 camps that held 10,000 people a piece. In the whole United States at that time, there were only 130,000 Japanese American in the United States. And out of the 130,000, 10,000 were scattered all over the United States, mostly around New York area. And out of the 120,000, whatever the people they moved on their own, they could move out of California, but you can't come back in, but you can go out. And then whoever left, they said it was 110. They more or less figured 110 people were moved into these 10 camps. Mm-hmm. And we were the first one because we were the first one to be moved out of our area. Us and someplace up in Bainbridge Island up north. And we had, we were, I think it was either 1st of April or latter part of March there. I can't remember exact day, but I'm pretty sure it was 1st of April that we were in there. There was only 10 blocks finished, or 12 blocks finished, and we were on the 10th block. And that's where we went. And as soon as we got there, I got a job as a mail delivery guy. And a lot of people, when they got there, they had volunteers go up there before we moved up. People, bachelors, they took their own car, and they said, we're going to give you a job of building the buildings in the camp. So they're the one that built the rest of the camp to live in. But these were nothing but a 100-foot by 20-foot wide building with tar paper on it. That's it. There's no nothing, just a knot hose, different places all over. So the sand come blowing in there, and I can show you in the picture there that we went to the mess hall to get can lids to put can lid over the knot hole. After 2-3 months, the knot dries out and drops down, so you got a big hole in the floor. So the sand keeps blowing in. So we had to go to the mess hall and get can and then pound nail over top of that to keep the sand from coming in. Those are the things we done at that time.
Wow. So here you are. You're a United States citizen, born in this country. Yeah. You have a U.S. passport. You're 18 years old. You're starting college. You're in the prime of your life.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you're in an internment camp and considered an enemy of the country.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel?
To me, like they say, it can't be helped. That's the attitude the Japanese had at the time. Most of the because they kept, JACL keep harping that don't bother what they're going to do. Do what they tell you to do. Don't give any friction. Because I think, to me, I just felt as though that they were pussyfooting the government to give them a better position. In other words, they're soft-soaping them so they could get a better position themselves. Just like that, it's another type of a greed, you could call it. So humans seem like they all have a certain amount of greed in them. And that's the first thing that I noticed, more than anything else. I figured, boy, they're trying to grab our property for nothing. So what they've done with our boat, we were all in the camp. My dad, as soon as they took him in San Diego, we didn't even know where he went to. For 2 years, we didn't know where he was.
Your father was not in the camp with you?
No, not with us.
Who was in the camp? Was it your mother and your brothers?
Every one of the fishermen's husbands, they were taken right as soon as they come out in from the fishing. They come back in. FBI was all over the island, and they took them all in. Every one of them. In fact, my buddy, the picture I was showing you on the wall there. This guy here, he was born in Japan, and he came here when he was 3 months old, United States. And he graduated together with me, but he was a fisherman when the war started. And when he got out of when he came in from fishing, the FBI grabbed him. Now he spoke just like me. He's a regular. I mean, he doesn't know Japan. He was only 3 months when he came here.
Mm-hmm.
He was born in Japan, but he got sent to the same camp that the first generation Issei people went to. My dad got moved 6 times in the course of 2 years, and finally in Lordsburg, what is it, Arizona? Well, anyway, down in the south there. That's where he came from. There to Manzanar after 2 years, with no offense or anything on there, just a complete release.
So for 2 years he was moved from camp to camp?
Yeah, we didn't even know where he was.
And you didn't know where he was.
But
and when you got letters from him...
Yeah, it would be cut out.
There were cutouts in the letters?
So you can't tell what they're talking about.
Well, why were there cutouts? Because they were afraid that...
Well, they would get idea of what they were doing with this and that, so they don't want us to know anything about that, the life that they had in the camp.
Mm-hmm.
And then while they were in camp, the government and the cannery or whatever they done, they got the boat, and they made Minesweeper because they were perfect boat for Minesweeper. They're wooden hull. They're not metal boats. They're wooden hull. They got nice engines in them, and they were sent to South Pacific someplace, and we never know what happened. Though we never got it back, never got paid for, and even the fish that we went to unload that day, nobody got paid. The cannery always have. It was the Del Monte company. They said that they did something. They said, yeah, we paid whoever it was. They were all fictitious. They had what they call, in other words, it's all made up stories.
Mm-hmm.
So we sued the government for 70 years or 60 years, and I went through 8 lawyers in the course of time, and they all died off. And eventually, I think it was after the 50th year, this lawyer said the best thing to do is because they cannot bring the case out. The government have to bring it out before the lawsuit could be ironed out. So now something came out that after, I think it was in the 80s, in 1980, something, I forget what year it was. They said they might be able to do something, so get all the papers together. We try to get all the papers. They don't even know where it's at anymore. We can't find it. None of the papers. So we lost the whole situation that way. But my folks never want to talk about it. They said, I got 5 kids. And I says, I came here, I didn't have anything when they came to the United States, but I got 5 wonderful kids. I says, what more can you ask for? So that's the way he died.
Your father?
But yeah, that was my dad, yeah. And
so all your possessions were lost?
Oh, everything. We didn't get nothing from the government except the redress money, which is $20,000. That was the redress apology from the government. But that was done from the 4th generation group kids. It was a little bit too late. It should have been done when my folks were living. Those are the ones that.
When did you receive? I know it was, I think, in 1988.
88, they started it.
Yes, President Reagan approved.
And then Bush is the one that I got it here, this here. I got it here with me, the paper.
Uh-huh.
So that it was a little bit too late, because to me, even a little bit of apology would have really helped the first generation people, because they just took it with a grin and said, what can you do? That was the attitude. It can't be helped.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but they were Japanese. I'm a Japanese. I look like a Japanese, but my heart was American. So that's the reason why a lot of guys that went to Japan to get educated and they come back, they were called kibeis. There are a lot of them. You think that, well, what can they do for the Army service? So, well, they're the one that really helped the United States save a lot of people, because of the fact that they were in there as a counterintelligence, smuggling into the Japanese outfit, report everything to the United States. Those are the things still coming out yet. Nobody knows too much about that because they're all hush-hush. Mm-hmm. They're quiet, keep quiet.
So it was almost 50 years later that the government finally made a payment for reparation.
Yeah.
How did you feel about that? I mean, it's at this
to
point,
me,
many of the people who were
I didn't even want
interned.
to talk about it, because when I was talking to Alan Woodruff. I said, he wanted me to talk to the Rotary Club. He said, make sure you talk about the redress. I said, no, I don't particularly want to talk about it, because when I start to talk about it, it makes me mad because of the fact that they should have done that years before. And this is mostly for the people that went to the camp. But I said, these are the people that don't know too much about that. They were just born at the time now. Like me, I know what happened. But even myself, I don't even know what prejudice was at that time because I didn't encounter any. But the older group, the older guys like myself, second generation older guys, they know because of the fact that when they went out to get a job, they wouldn't get first chance. They would always be, if there was a guy with an equal education or smarter than the Caucasian guy, he would never get that job. The other guy would get, the Caucasian guy would get the job. They encountered that. That's the reason why they formed this JACL. And if I was a little bit older, out of college, I would have probably think a little different. But I didn't think that way. I was just an ordinary American lad at that time. So to me, everything was greed. Anything I came to me with, boy, these guys are really trying to get something for nothing, you know. And that's what I thought at that particular time.
Mm-hmm. What was life like inside the internment camp?
Mandarin was the first one, so everything was tight. In other words, you couldn't own a camera, you couldn't own anything, you couldn't go outside. But at the Heart Mountain,
so you could not leave the camp?
Oh no, that was barbed wire fence with that. There was 8 or 9 towers of the machine gun sitting right towards you.
Wow.
Oh yeah, with searchlight. And in fact, this was about a year after we were there. The administration was taking food that was coming into the camp, and they were selling it on black market outside the camp. And people found out about that, so they went to protest.